you proposing taking away their guns?
Yes.
Enough prayers. Time for some action.
You want to take everyone's guns away.
Bingo. Enough prayers. Time for some action.
We're going to take your AR-15.
We're not going to give up. We'll find you.
We'll find you.
We'll find you. And yeah, we find ourselves a day after another, or I guess 2 days after now, I guess.
Something.
Another mass shooting. This one, the biggest one in a decade. And
I think it happened yesterday, actually.
Oh, was it yesterday morning?
I think it was yesterday morning, yeah. I know because I recorded an episode of Ravel that has something to do with it, and it made me very afraid. So, yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to just follow a little bit of a timeline here. Beto O'Rourke. Sorry.
Oh.
Messed that
Good
up.
try. Nice try.
I'm just going to call him Beto. You know Beto. Everyone knows Beto.
You know Beto.
Governor candidate, Texas. Let's see, a few days ago, this was on May 18th, 2022, retweeted Fox 26 Houston, remembering the victims of the horrific Santa Fe high school shooting. And Beto tweeted out, 4 years ago today, we lost the lives of 8 students and 2 teachers at Santa Fe High School. Since then, no laws have been passed in Texas to prevent another mass shooting from taking our loved ones. We must honor the lives lost with action. And of course, like clockwork, we all know what happened yesterday. I think what's the count? 19 children and 2 or 3 adults.
Yeah, I've seen actually a few different counts. The highest
the numbers
counts
were, it was just updating constantly. I think it was like 2 when it first started, 2 children dead, and then like 14 injured, and then it just flipped to,
horrible
19.
story.
Yeah.
Horrible story. Okay, keep going. You got more?
So Governor Abbott was doing a press conference this morning in, is it Uvalde? Is that saying it correctly? I just want to make sure.
I don't know. I've never actually heard anybody say it.
Uvalde.
Okay.
Uvalde, Texas. And this is what happened.
Pass the mic to Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick.
Governor, I would say something.
Excuse me. Excuse me.
That's Beto.
Excuse me.
He's after Santa Fe.
Sit down.
You're out of line and an embarrassment.
He's after
Sit down and don't play this.
The next shooting is right now, and you are doing nothing.
No, please, anytime. This isn't the place to talk this over.
This is totally predictable when you...
Sir, you're out of line. Sir, you are out of line. Sir, you are out of line. Please leave this auditorium. I can't believe you're a sick son of a shit, but we would come to a deal like this to make a political issue.
So there you go. That's what took place.
So that was Beto?
That was Beto that started. It was kind of hard to hear him for those of you just listening. Yeah, so Beto interrupted the handoff from Governor Abbott over to Lieutenant Dan, and he started yelling about the gun control issue. I mean, on par with that tweet from a few days ago, and it disrupted the whole thing. And the guy yelling back was a gentleman in the back. I don't know who he is. Maybe somebody knows exactly who he is. But yeah, I had to do a little audio manipulation to censor some of the words just to keep it as clean as possible. But so a little staging. CNN Live too, by the way.
Right. For those who were just listening, it was a press briefing type of thing, a big statement. There's about 30 guys up on or 30, I don't know who they are, mixture of law enforcement, politicians.
Yeah, Ted Cruz is back there. There's
Ted Cruz is there. Yeah. There's about 30 people up on stage during this press briefing. Beto O'Rourke, who notably, of course, Abbott was up there, governor of Texas, notably, Beto ran against Abbott and lost in the governor's race. What was it, 2 years ago or whatever?
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. It just is so obviously a political stunt. And of course, the Beto supporters are going to be very proud of him for just not having enough. It's one of these moments where, letting your rage show and interrupting the norms. When Trump would break norms or go against norms or whatever, then of course he's a bad man, bad orange man. But as we've seen, especially on an election year, breaking decorum is sort of, an admirable thing for Democrats to do, because, who needs norms when the lives of children are at stake?
Yeah. And I guarantee you this wouldn't have happened or nobody would have cared if it wasn't on CNN Live. I mean,
and that's another thing.
It feels like just, he got a little notice in the earpiece. Oh, CNN's live streaming this press conference. Great opportunity. That is trigger for, cause scene at event.
And to specifically, make it a political thing, right? Make it a political statement. Like, what else is there? What other reason is there to interrupt in this way? We all think it's horrible. We all feel the way you do. It's not some sort of revolutionary act to get up and yell about how bad this is. But specifically, of course, it's a response to Republican politicians standing up and, making a scene. It's you'll get points. Much like how congressional hearings are opportunities for politicians just to get sound bites. This is just a nice little soundbite getter. Yeah.
And he went on to do more yelling outside and, very passionate. By the end of it, I was like, all right, let's come together then, Beto. Let's do it. Let's make it happen.
You're a Beto head now, huh?
Hey, I'm just trying to.
And Beto, of course, being the Texas, former gubernatorial candidate who just straight up said, like, yes, we will take your guns. That's the plan.
Yeah.
We are good. And surprise, surprise, didn't get him voted in as the governor of Texas.
Yeah.
So that was the mainstay of his message there.
Right.
Are you good? You have any more clips about that?
I don't, but I have so many gun control jingles that we're going to cycle through these as we switch stories here.
Gun violence is an epidemic.
There we go. This one's coming from thedailybeast.com. Now, I'm going to read a little bit of this, and then I'm going to point out some sort of glaring comparisons to make about how this shooting is being handled and how the previous one is being handled.
Yeah.
Dailybeast.com, school dropout gave warning on Facebook minutes before Uvalde massacre.
I was just going to say, a completely different headline from what I got here.
They changed it up. What is the headline you got?
Probably the previous headline, which is, quote,
they changed it.
Kids be scared. Texas shooter grew angry after dropping out of school. But I think that even changed because that was different from when I first saw it. So, this is typical Daily Beast.
Yeah.
Hey, hold on one second. Sorry. Keep going.
Okay. Salvador Ramos, an unemployed teenager who appeared to grow angry and isolated recently, wrote 3 Facebook posts in the 30 minutes before he headed to Robb Elementary. They have a picture of the guy here. It looks like they just took his, driver's license picture. It's got the driver's license blue background in the back. The 18-year-old gunman who opened fire at a Texas elementary school, killing at least 19 kids and 2 adults, wrote 3 disturbing messages on Facebook just minutes before the massacre, warning of the carnage.
This is an update again from what I got here, but that's good. We have the latest. Go ahead. Sorry.
There we go. We got the latest. Quote, I'm going to shoot my grandmother, Salvador Ramos wrote about 30 minutes before his rampage at Robb Elementary School. Texas Governor Greg Abbott said Wednesday. Ramos made good on his vow, writing minutes later that he'd, quote, shot my grandmother. His last message foretold of his final act of unspeakable violence, quote, I'm going to shoot an elementary school, he wrote about 15 minutes before he arrived on campus. Abbott revealed the shooter's final post at a press conference, saying there was, quote, no meaningful forewarning of this crime. Facebook specified that they were private one-on-one messages, not public posts. And that is a big part of the whole story that is not being handled very well in the press, but we'll get into that later. The messages mirror texts Ramos reportedly sent to a 15-year-old female acquaintance in Germany, who then shared them with CNN, in which he indicated he erupted because he was annoyed his grandmother took issue with his phone bill. And then it's got a screen. It's not even a screenshot. It's a photo of a phone screen, which is an interesting way for this to be done, but okay. But Ramos legally bought 2 AR-style rifles just after his 18th birthday this month and appeared to grow angry and isolated after he failed to graduate high school, friends and family members said. Although Ramos was described as quiet by numerous people who knew him, a young woman who worked with him at Wendy's until March detected an aggressive streak. Several former friends said he had stopped showing up at school and was not going to graduate with the senior class this year. Quote, he would be very rude towards the girls sometimes, and one of the cooks threatening them by asking, "Do you know who I am?" And he would also send inappropriate texts to the ladies, said the former co-worker, who did not want her name used. Quote, at the park, there'd be a video of him trying to fight people with boxing gloves. He'd take them around with him. Natalie B., 19, who lives a block away from Ramos's grandma, said she knew the shooter from high school. Quote, he had anger issues. People are saying he was bullied, but I didn't see that. He was more like the bully, she told the Daily Beast. Ramos's grandfather, Ronald Reyes, told ABC News that Ramos didn't go to school last year and spent a lot of time alone in his room in his grandparents' modest bungalow in Uvalde. Quote, he didn't talk very much, said Reyes, who added that Ramos moved out of his mom's house after they had, quote, problems. I think it's an interesting detail to say that he didn't go to school last year, although I guess Texas was sort of one of the states to open schools back up, yeah?
Yeah, I think so.
In an interview at a local hospital where Ramos's grandmother, Celia Gonzalez, is being treated, the shooter's mom, Adriana Reyes, told the Daily Mail she was surprised by her son's rampage. Quote, my son wasn't a violent person, she claimed. Quote, I had a good relationship with him. He kept to himself. He didn't have many friends. She said the last time they spoke was Ramos's birthday when she gave him a card and a, quote, a Snoopy stuffed animal.
He's for his 18th birthday?
His 18th birthday.
His mom got him a Snoopy stuffed animal. Okay.
Snoopy stuffy. Okay.
All right.
But the mom's live-in boyfriend, 62-year-old Juan Alvarez, told NBC News that the teen had a turbulent relationship with Reyes and left her home after a fight over the Wi-Fi. Quote, he was kind of a weird one. I never got along with him. I never socialized with him. He doesn't talk to anybody, he said. Quote, when you try to talk to him, he'd just sit there and walk away. Ronald Reyes says his grandson celebrated his 18th birthday on May 16th with a trip to Applebee's with his grandmother. But they had no idea he also celebrated by purchasing 2 AR-15 style rifles and 375 rounds of ammunition. On Tuesday morning, Reyes said a neighbor alerted him that Ramos, who is unlicensed, had shot his unlicensed in what? What license are we talking about here?
I don't know.
Had shot his grandmother and taken his grandmother's truck. Driver's license, maybe? Newsy reported that a neighbor named Eduardo said Ramos was angry that he didn't graduate and got into an argument with his grandmother. She was screaming, quote, he shot me, the neighbor recounted to Newsy. Ramos then crashed the truck near Robb Elementary, prompting a witness to call 911. Local police pursued him as he ran into the school wearing a tactical-style vest and carrying a rifle, Texas DPS spokesperson Lieutenant Chris Olivares said. He barricaded himself in a classroom and started shooting whoever was in the way. Ramos was unemployed and had no criminal history. Now, it goes on for quite a while. There's talks about how he's made lots of posts over, the recent time. He was posting pictures with guns. He was, posting comments, sort of violent comments. He was chatting with people online. He was literally talking to people about how he wanted to shoot up a school and stuff. That's not a quote, but I mean, there's a whole string of conversations that he's having with people online where he's basically telling people the plans. And it ends here. He said that some of his co-workers at Cargill had family affected by the shooting. Quote, when they heard about this, they had some cousin. Oh, I'm sorry. That's not what I wanted to jump to.
Here, I had a thing here.
Yeah,
and sort of
yeah,
named
they
as
did
part of
kind
the
of switch it around. Yeah, what do you got?
yeah, it's part of the title of the episode here. But it says here in the article, the same Instagram account, which is, they go through a bunch of stuff on his Instagram account, was deleted shortly after Texas Governor Greg Abbott identified him as the shooter. It featured photos and stories of semi-automatic firearms, as well as selfies of someone who strongly resembled a photo of the killer shared by the Texas Department of Public Safety. A TikTok account with the same handle and profile picture, also taken offline on Tuesday, featured only a clip of the mobile game and the line, "Kids be scared IRL." It's in real life. Both accounts used the bio line, "The biggest op," OPP.
Right.
And it's very interesting. Like, the biggest op, OPP being like opportunity, I think.
No, it's a gamer term.
Mm-hmm.
Was it? Yeah, I mean, we did kind of look into this, but what do you
I
got?
have the sort of urban definition, the top definition anyway, is anyone in competition or against you. So
right.
It's kind of like an adversary.
Yeah, it's
kind
of like enemy type of thing.
Right. So it just but there's also like the operations type of reference, perhaps.
Yeah.
But it's just weird to tag yourself the biggest op. I don't know. It's just strange. I just wanted to point that out.
Troubled kid.
Sure.
So it's been interesting to watch the response for this one. Of course, the Buffalo shooter immediately prompted the news cycle to dive deep into white supremacy, into the great replacement theory, into Tucker Carlson's culpability, into all these things. But this is problematic with this individual because he was of Hispanic origin, or a Latin fella, born in the U.S. He's an American citizen, as far as we can tell. And you can't quite call it white supremacy, so it immediately goes to gun control. And it's coming on very strongly. A lot of gun control, as is to be expected. Beto being sort of the poster boy for gun control in Texas. But not a whole lot of talk about the motive behind it. Besides, he's just a troubled fella. Mm-hmm. I just thought it was interesting when it was a white shooter. It's all about motive. It's not so much about how do you get the guns, why do you get the guns, how, this type of thing. So when you can't sort of pontificate and theorize about a racist motivation, you got to go to, hey, he bought some guns for his birthday. And how problematic is that? Well, if he didn't have, a criminal record, he could have passed a background check. These types of things. So, but a lot of this stuff still continues to trickle out. Yeah. Now, there was an interesting part about this, Gonzo. Mm-hmm. This was talk about, how can we make this even more about the culture war? It seems like there was an attempt to insert this into the culture war in a different way. And I'm going to bring this from Vice, or do you want to read this? What do you think?
Oh, I can do it. Yeah. This is Vice. The headline is "The Far Right is Falsely Blaming a Trans Woman for the Texas School Shooting." Okay.
Weird headline. Falsely blaming a trans woman. Mm-hmm. Considering, I don't know, we know the guy's name. We know who he is. The guy who did it. You don't got to blame anybody. But okay, the far right blaming a trans woman. What do we got, Guns?
As the horrors of the worst school shooting in a decade were unfolding on Tuesday afternoon, the far right began immediately spreading disinformation about it. And what is now a sadly typical cycle of information and disinformation related to mass shootings, the false narratives that circulated in the wake of the horrific massacre in Uvalde, Texas, were designed not only to confuse, but also to deflect blame from America's gun laws and onto the far right's favorite targets.
Okay. Yeah. A typical cycle. What are you talking about? What is typical about this cycle as far as the information and disinformation? Well, was there disinformation and information about the Buffalo shooter that got debunked or something?
I don't know. I guess it was the Great Replacement stuff that was being debunked.
Unless they're talking about the typical cycle that we watched, which was connecting the Great Replacement theory to mainstream Republicans.
Right.
Was that the info and disinfo?
And I like how they already imply that this is like a part of a design. It's designed not only to confuse, but also deflect. And it's like, well, seems like this whole thing, the whole topic here has been designed to deflect and confuse. Okay, so the shooter was a quote the shooter was a quote transsexual leftist illegal alien named Salvatore Ramos, end quote, tweeted far-right Republican Rep Paul Gosar, citing a bogus conspiracy theory dreamed up by trolls in the worst part of the internet.
That's a pretty big whoopsies there, Gosar.
Gosar's tweet reads, "We know already, fool. Period. It's a transsexual leftist illegal alien named Salvatore Ramos. It's apparently your kind of trash." And I don't know who he's retweeting here, but that tweet got deleted.
Yeah,
but
he was
not a good look.
He was quote tweeting somebody. But that tweet is sort of
doesn't matter anymore.
But it got deleted. It says here, this tweet was deleted by the tweet author. So, but Vice, you could have sort of gone back into the archives and retrieved this, right? I don't know. It's just kind of like convenient that they would have left the original tweet as out of the story, because who knows what this person said? It could have been some sort of bait, and let's remember that as we continue. Yeah.
So according to the Vice here, a Gosar's source for this bogus claim was 4chan, where trolls had grabbed random images of a transgender artist from their Reddit account and claimed they were photos of the 18-year-old Uvalde shooter. The images show a trans woman in a red long-sleeved Coca-Cola shirt and black miniskirt, which the trolls claimed was the shooter, identified by law enforcement officials as Uvalde resident Salvador Ramos. One post on 4chan discussing the campaign to boost these lies admitted that Ramos was not trans, but that, quote, this was good optics, adding, quote, let's just call every one of these school shooters trannies. No glory for degenerate losers, end quote. The images quickly made their way from 4chan to extremist platforms like Telegram and Gab. Well, Telegram just being described as an extremist platform. I've noticed that they've mentioned Telegram more and more.
They love mentioning Telegram.
Because they don't do anything about anything, really. Which is an interesting approach to, providing a communications platform.
Yeah, and they always say a Telegram user.
Right.
They never give a name. It just literally could be anybody. Yeah. It could be the reporter themselves posting it in a Telegram channel.
But now it's just an extremist platform.
Yeah, right.
Telegram again. Before moving to mainstream platforms like Twitter and Facebook, where the disinformation was boosted by accounts like Gosar's. Despite Twitter users immediately flagging Gosar's mistake, the congressman, who's known for attending white nationalist conferences alongside people who marched at the Charlottesville Unite the Right rally, took over 2 hours to delete his tweet. The trans woman, whose images were being shared, posted a message on Reddit on Tuesday night titled, quote, it's not me. I don't even live in Texas.
Yeah.
That's confusing.
Yeah, that's the whoopsie daisies. I have another article over here from Yahoo News mirrored by Today, where they actually, the guy whose photo was being spread around as the trans woman.
Yeah, it's confusing all of us.
Whose picture was being spread around is alive and aware and now like posting pictures of the time and date, being like, this is me, I'm not the guy, it's just me, don't hurt me. So now this brings up, did you want to read any more of that? I mean, I think we get the point.
Yeah, pretty straightforward.
This is when
here.
Vice moves into the culture war of things.
Right.
Now, somebody baited Paul Gosar, and somebody's baiting everybody with these types of things. And it's very, very effective. And this kind of goes to what I was saying last episode, which is there are things going on for instance, with monkeypox and the gay community. In this case, it's the Texas shooter. So easily did people fall for a simple picture of a person who has a similar hair color and, facial structure, simply being posted on social media. I mean, I saw some of the original spreading of this information, and, again, it's so easy to be like, oh, wow, that's crazy. I didn't know that, and then move on or share it or whatever. But when you're a politician or you're any, long story short, this was a very effective baiting operation that did exactly what it was meant to do, which was to, expose the fact that GOP politicians don't pay attention, and they're hateful, and they're anti-trans, and they're politicizing not only the shooting, but they're politicizing the gender and sexual orientation of the shooter, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. And it worked very well. And this is another thing for everybody to remember, is that this whole year, especially because it's an election year, there's going to be crazy things going on all year long. And when something fits a little bit too neatly into some sort of unfortunate event, you can almost guarantee that it's bait. And, Republicans, unfortunately, a contingent of Republicans, they take the bait way too easily, and it's going to hurt, well, everybody, not just them as a politician, but all of society. So we'll see more baiting later on in the show, but this will become a theme. Right. And before the show, as Basil and I, we were trying to work out the flow of the episode and stuff. So I had seen this, and, I didn't know. I had a feeling that it was probably not true, but it was interesting to see people start to bring up mental health as more of a mainstream topic, then seeing the whole trans thing pop up, because I couldn't get my mind off of the fact that, a few years ago, and I know, Basil, I tried to explain this to you beforehand. It didn't come out right then. It may not come out right now. But this is what we do. We challenge each other to articulate a little bit better. I can't wait to hear it. So the only thing that kept popping up into my mind is how a few years ago, 2019 was the year, the World Health Organization, changed transgenderism from a mental disorder into just kind of like a normal thing. And it's sort of not declassified. What's the word? 2019, demoted. Right? 2019, yeah. It demoted it from being a mental problem or health problem, which I'm not saying that specifically, but I would say people that have that tendency, we all have mental issues, but, it's just an interesting topic of conversation to bring up. And so agreeing with you that there's a psyop element to this, that putting out this wrongful information about the shooter would be bait for, these Republicans, especially that guy, this guy that was quoted. I love it. And Gosar, I mean, man, he just went full in, and that's, hook, line, sinker. There you go. You got your story against Republican, which I understand. But I think the reason, real quick, just let me. Sure. The reason why I think you're so on the right track is because where does the conversation go, especially with sort of the alternative media or the analysts or the deconstructionists or whatever, who try to see past the politicalness of these things. If you're trying to see through the great replacement and Tucker Carlson and we need to vote in Democrats, narrative, what always comes up? It's mental health. Yeah. Mental health is what comes up. And this individual is obviously sick in the head and is evident simply by his actions on social media and the way people describe him. But if you can bait the mental health people, the people, decrying mental health as the cause of evil, rather than the gun or whatever, if you can bait them into being like, oh, see, he was trans. It's a mental health issue, and deflect from everything else. It's, again, a very effective psyop that can turn even the most diligent sort of narrative skeptics.
Wasn't the shooter from Buffalo 18 years old?
Yeah.
Both
all
18.
These guys are so young,
They're
man.
very young, and
they're
I
all
think,
young.
I think that there's a couple points to make on this for me anyway. Is one, to finish out the whole trans sort of psyop conversation. I think it puts people like us, Basil, in kind of in between a rock and a hard place, because, you know, on one hand, we don't want to go GoSar and be like, hey, fool, just real go hard,
right.
which, I mean, our sort of natural reactions.
Never go full GoSar.
Might tend to lean in that direction, but part of what's happening here, if you really kind of step back and look at it, this is the progression of transhumanism that we've talked about for a decade. If you look at the spiritual roots behind this, it's all the occult philosophies. If you look at, you know, the sort of narrative about all gender being divided is, you know, it's sort of it was part of the fall, and we were meant to be a unified gender. That kind of philosophy is all wrapped up into this behind the scenes quietly, right? And that's what's happening. It's kind of taken over. But the other part of it is, you know, whether you think that this is this particular instance with this Texas shooter was, you know, completely controlled or not, I think the people that, or not necessarily the people, but the sort of spirit behind it is the same, in that you can blame media, or mainstream media that builds the culture, that builds the mental health or mental state of an entire population. And in this country, we have suffered since 9/11.
Social engineering.
A very, very powerful level of social engineering post 9/11. And I think we are seeing the results of that with this type of sort of young people lashing out. There was another story from, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, of another 18-year-old who was, I guess he was arrested or something. He was making bomb threats to his school. And, you know, I guess he played it off as, I was just joking and whatever. But, you know, that's a fine line between, it's a joke, and it's kind of like the Joker, right? You just can't tell if it's like it's all a joke or if it's all serious. It's
sort of nihilism type of
this nihilism going on. So
absurdism type of thing.
Yeah. And so again, it's by design in that sense that, you know, the cultural way in which the mind control has operated and permeated our entire milieu. But also you can look at the more immediate assistance that may have caused or, you know, instigated this event. And, you know, it just reminds me of all the Black Awakening stuff that the late Russ Dizdar talked about.
Sure. You know, what's very strange about the coverage of this whole thing? Not a single attempt at talking about motivation. Not a single attempt. Like, you know, the sort of trans psyop was sort of diffused the mental illness angle to it. Yeah. And yet not a single attempt at exposing a motivation, or at least even pontificating on a motivation. And it makes it even stranger because they have a whole treasure trove of chat logs, text logs, social media posts, this and that. And, you know, not a single report, mainstream report at least, has mentioned any sort of motivation. Now, there is sort of an alt media, again, I don't know, I wouldn't even give it that much credit, but there is sort of social media chatter about how lots of border control agents' kids went to this school, and how that maybe motivated it somehow. But I don't really, you know, I think that's just more chatter than anything else. But I think it is very strange. No attempt whatsoever to claim a motivation. And in the absence of some sort of politically beneficial motivation to harp on, you just go straight to the guns. Straight to the guns. He bought the guns, and that's it. The guns did it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to be keeping an eye out for more, certainly because of the lack of I don't know, the manifesto or something. They're going to be sort of squeezing this one for a little bit more time. What I also thought was suspicious. Lots of reports calling this the second mass shooting in whatever it was, a few weeks. And it's like, yo, that first, the Buffalo weekend, there was like 3 mass shootings. Are we forgetting about the Chinese man shooting up the Taiwanese church? That one's just erased from the news cycle.
Well,
not even being
because they locked him down.
Not even being
tied him up, but they hog-tied him. This is a bad look for the self-defense sort of conversation. Which, by the way, I saw a thing being shared around the 2021 National Firearms Survey from July of 2021, and it says the survey further finds that approximately a third of gun owners, 31.1%, have used a firearm to defend themselves or their property, often on more than one occasion, and it estimates that guns are used defensively by firearms owners in approximately 1.67 million incidents per year.
Wow, that's a lot of incidents.
That's a lot of incidents being prevented because of gun ownership. So,
you know, another question I have, and we do need to move on, but another question I have is, they keep going back to, he flunked school. He dropped out of school. He didn't do good in school. So maybe that's why he did it. He was sad about not graduating school. The real question is, why didn't he graduate school? He obviously had something going on that not graduating school was a symptom of something else, and also that symptom went unheeded, much like the symptom of, talking violently to your coworkers and bullying people, carrying around boxing gloves to try to fight people in the streets. Like, this fella was troubled, and him flunking school was not the cause of his problems. It was a symptom of his problems.
And by the way, the only real tangible solution to this in any sort of tangible way, unfortunately, because people always say, we must do something. The only thing that I see can really make a true tangible difference is more surveillance. More surveillance. I mean, they can try to take away your guns, but that might be rough on America. So,
you're right.
Just we got to make sure that everybody's guns are accounted for.
We're going to scan
everything's going to be. It's all about being watched more.
And the social media surveillance. Like, why didn't Zuckerberg report that this violent person was? So it's a whole thing. This will be used. This is another way that, or another instance where this story can be plugged into so many different issues. That'll happen on the, the other weird thing about it. Oh my gosh, we gotta move on. Okay. The other weird thing about it was, it was an elementary school. It's not like he went and shot up his own high school that he flunked out of.
Was it a random school? There's no...
They don't give any motivation. Again, that's kind of what's leaving room, I think, for the pontification about, it was like a lot of Border Patrol agents' kids went there. But just kind of seems like a random school. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions on Border Patrol that ran in.
Border Patrol was
not waiting for backup to shoot the guy, but then another article said that there are cops chasing him in, and so I don't know. It's weird, man. That's a weird thing.
He crashed his truck. The cops showed up and chased him into the school. Yeah. Like, it's just the weirdest story.
Weird. It is weird. And I feel very horrible for the people that actually
it's
lost
awful.
Family. It's terrible.
It's absolutely awful.
Terrible.
And if you subscribe to Ravel, you'll see why it feels even spookier when the next episode comes out.